Like many priests of his time, Father Ken Lasch, 83, of Morristown, New Jersey, is beloved and respected. The respect for Father Ken, however, is quite unique and most likely not what one would expect, because 35 years ago, Father Ken took the road less traveled, and that, as Robert Frost said, has made all the difference. In 1985, Father Ken chose to help the young and the most vulnerable of his flock by shining a light on a dark truth that no one dared illuminate: sexual abuse by a priest in his own parish. As difficult as the situation was for all those involved, Father Ken has no regrets. For his acts of courage and bravery, he enjoys a legion of admirers that includes only 3 priests.
He kind of put himself on the altar of truth there. He must have had some terrible days and nights. We are thankful to him. We admire him. He's a really good guy.
While growing up in Morristown in the 50s, Father Ken could little imagine such darkness.
Well, I remember Morristown as a small town, friendly town. People who ran the stores or who worked in the stores were often Morristown residents, so it was not like going into to the store to meet somebody you didn't know. My mother worked in Epstein's, and many of the employees knew her, and of course they knew us as Irene's kids. Basically, it was the friendliness of the town. That it was a simple way of life.
Do you remember what inspired you to consider the priesthood?
Well, in those days, it wasn't unusual for young priests who were altar servers to think about priesthood. The priests were always scouting, young boys. And one priest in the parish kept prodding me. He kept saying, you better take 4 years of Latin. I said, I'm not going to take Latin. I don't like Latin, and blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, if you go into the seminary someday, you're going to need 4 years of Latin. I kept pushing it away, and then finally when I went to Seton Hall, I signed up for business administration, but some of my buddies had already committed themselves to enter the pre-seminary course, and so somehow I decided that I would give it a try. So I switched from business to seminary. After 2 years of pre-seminary, you go into the major seminary, and I went up to the seminary several times, just like going to West Point. Darlington Seminary at that time, there was kind of an elite sense about this seminary, and I was impressed with the seminarians, and so I decided that I would continue the pre-seminary and then go into the seminary after 2 years of college. Then we stayed there for 4 years of theology.
What were your hopes in being a priest?
I think, as I recall, I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to be in a parish. I wanted to be a counselor. I mean, not a clinical counselor, but I wanted to be there for the people. Priesthood was not clear. The job description was not clearly defined at that time. You were there to be available to the people, whatever their needs may be. So that's what I wanted to do.
Ordained in 1962, Father Ken was sent to Rome after 1 year to study canon law. It was the time of the Second Vatican Council, a revolutionary period that yielded liturgical changes and consultative parish councils.
Oh my God, it was so exciting. I was kind of what you might call a pretty traditional, somewhat conservative, traditional priest. And when I went to Rome, my mind opened up to all the possibilities that the church could be. I had never been out of the country before, so being in Rome and catching the flavor of living like the Italians, it was great.
When he returned to New Jersey in 1966, Bishop Casey appointed Father Ken Vice Chancellor of the Paterson Diocese. Though one of the youngest on the staff, he was recognized and became founding director of the restored permanent diaconate for the diocese and later secretary for parish ministries.
I was kind of well respected. I was kind of the youngest, and I was close to a lot of younger priests and even some older priests. And I got a reputation for being the guy to go to in the chancery. And, Ken Lasch will take care of your problems. So they used to call me No Problem Lasch.
And that was it. And you were there overall for how long?
Oh, in the diocese, in the pastoral, I guess it had to be close to 15 years.
Yeah, wow.
Maybe more.
After 17 years as a respected leader in the Diocese of Paterson, Father Ken was sent to St. Joseph's in Mendham.
So I went up to Mendham, and it became the best decision of my life. People were alert, sharp, responsive, collaborative, respectful, energetic, you name it. And the school was superb. But to build a church that would accommodate a lot more people, the parish was growing in leaps and bounds, and so there was a need. So I consulted with the people. We did a feasibility study, and the study revealed that, yes, there was a need for a church, and so we built the church. We raised the church, close to, over time, we raised $4 million. Paid the church off in less than 10 years. The $4 million covered the church, a small addition to the school, and a parish house. In those years, you could build a lot with $4 million.
Yeah.
We built the school addition, a major school addition, in 2003. But it became just a Camelot. It was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience.
Or so it seemed. Just 2 years after his arrival, in 1985, a parishioner approached Father Ken with an unthinkable story.
I was there only 2 years, and the first victim of Jim Hanley, Mark, the Serrano, he's a matter of record, came forward. I think he was kind of nervous to go to a pastor because the pastor had abused him. So, but finally he did come to me personally, and we did have to report it to the bishop. But, Rodimer didn't do much about it. In fact, he reassigned Hanley to another parish. It was a cover-up, classic cover-up. The father of Mark's father saw a picture in the Beacon of Jim Hanley celebrating Mass, surrounded by children at an altar, and Mark and I agreed that it was time to let the parish know that abuse had taken place in the parish. And so I called a meeting of parents who had children in St. Joseph's School or had children growing up between the years of 1972 and 82. And I met with them to tell them what was going on, what had happened. I didn't mention Mark's name, but Mark wrote a letter that I had to read at the meeting. The newspapers had showed up because somebody leaked it out. I think Mark himself leaked it out to the press. And I told the press that if they were respectful of that confidentiality, I would invite them in after the parents left, and I would tell them everything I told the parents, guarding, confidentiality of names and so forth. The diocese heard about the meeting, and I got a call from the chancery telling me that I couldn't have a meeting because it was in litigation. I said, but I'm going to have the meeting anyway. Although I was preaching about the issue, even before the meeting, I was kind of leaking it out in my homilies, very, very subtly. Mm-hmm. And one woman came to me after I had spoken about it, and she was crying in the vestibule of the church. And I said to her, what's wrong? She says, it's her son. I said, well, what happened to She says he was abused by Father Hanley. So that was the second victim. Mm. And then the youth minister came forward with another victim, a victim who went to her to say that he had been abused by Hanley, and he told her not to say anything about it. Of course, she was obliged by law to say something about it, so she told me. So that was 3 victims.
And then no support whatsoever from the diocese or your brothers, your brother priests.
No, there were 2 or 3, 4 exceptions to that, but most of them it was the code of silence.
And what was that like for you?
A feeling of isolation. It was a gut-wrenching reaction. First of all, finding out that brother priests had sexually abused these young kids. How could they do that? It became very personal because it happened in my own parish, in the rectory where I lived.
There were many of our fellow priests who criticized him for what he was doing. Some of the men felt that he was being disloyal to his own fellow priests by being so expressive, even publicly.
I was considered a betrayal. There were one vicar over and over who was eventually accused himself. He said, "Why doesn't Lasch keep his GD mouth shut?" I was on vacation with a couple of my priest friends up in Newport. The subject came up, and one of the priests from another diocese said, "Well, some of these kids bring it on themselves." I almost puked. I almost took the glass, threw it in his face. I went back to the house that night and packed my bags, and I made some excuse that I was not feeling well, and I decided to go back home. And that's the last time I saw that priest.
We were not satisfied with what the bishop didn't do, and so Ken and I, but Ken mostly, took the lead in terms of talking to family, talking to others, and trying to gain a way to get the abuser surfaced as well.
Mm-hmm. And in 1985, one of my 7 children, my son Mark, came forward to them, to Ken Lasch and Mike Drury, that he had been abused by Hanley. This was in March when he was a junior at Notre Dame. He came home for his break, and at Thanksgiving, he did tell his father what had happened. After that, after 87, 88, 9, Ken Lasch and I started meeting every Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Thanks to Ken Lasch, the victims had their own meeting. It turned out we had maybe 100+ people there came forward. And we had a support meeting here at St. Joseph's, thanks to Ken Lasch. He certainly deserves much more than he gets, and people understand that, I think.
I thought that he handled it very, very skillfully, prudently, honestly, measuring his words and speaking always the truth. My hope always was that in the end, we'll all see that he brought honor to the priesthood by his own integrity, his own bravery.
He was able to get through the muddle of the bureaucracy with the hierarchy, and that's how he became labeled. That's how some of the hierarchy became very threatened, and really were in a state of denial for a long period of time. But Ken was the key person. He still is, for that matter. And although it has hurt him emotionally and probably even physically at times and spiritually, but his strength and his spirituality has gotten him through everything. So he's never lost his determination or his pastoral ability to see through the muddle and to try and do what is correct in spite of the challenges from, or the ignorance of the hierarchy and their denial of everything.
In 2002, Mark told his story to the New York Times that reported the inside story of Father Ken's parish meetings as follows. The allegations were made public in 1995 when a maverick priest who broke with widely accepted church thinking informed the parish congregation of the allegations.
And their response to me was overwhelming. They couldn't believe that there was a priest who would not cover up and who would openly support them. I mean, they were so rare.
After many sleepless nights in 2003, Father Ken decided it was time to move on. He left the parish and retired, and devoted himself to working on behalf of victims.
There's a certain sadness. It'll always be there. There's that, I'm as you know, that I've been in treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. So, that's the gift that never stops giving. So I have a great sadness about what happened, and it's always there. It's always there in the background. I don't dwell on it every day, all day long, but every morning when I wake up, it's there in my gut. Sadness and disappointment. Some guilt. It's strange how that works. Did I do the right thing? Did I cause more scandal by coming forth? I rationalize away from that, but that's a piece of it. Did I do the right thing? Of course I did.
Right.
Of course I did.
Right. Right. These days, Father Ken appears to be at peace with his choices and continues to be hopeful.
I live with hope that the Church will become more pastorally sensitive, not just to the victims, but to other issues, marriage, second marriages, divorce, gay people, all the crucial issues of the day. You hear my hesitance. I do worry about at some point there being a split, because we seem to be retracting. We seem to be going back in some respects. But I keep hope alive, I don't let that. I still love saying Mass. I love preaching. I thirst for more change. I'm a change agent. I'd like to see more openness and more of a pastoral sensitivity.
He says, though I remain just inside the outer edge and sometimes just outside the outer edge, I've always been on the cutting edge, pushing limits. I remain a radical centrist, loyal and hopeful that honest and open dialogue will bear fruit over time. In the meantime, he says, we just keep sowing seeds. God will do the rest.